What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Riley's Talk. Today, we are going to be covering how Donald Trump can still win the 2020 election. I know it sounds extremely far-fetched. It really does, especially considering the fact that according to most people, the election ended on November 3rd. So how is it possible that Donald Trump can still win this, especially since Joe Biden has not only more popular votes, but more electoral votes? Well, guess what? It's possible. It's possible. Is it probable? Probably not, but in this video, we're going to show how it's possible and how it still can happen. So if you like the video, please do me a favor, hit the like and subscribe button at the bottom of the page. So let's just hop right into it. So this gentleman here, Mark R. Levine, he owns a talk show, podcast, what have you. But about a week ago or so, he sent a tweet out, and it went something like this. So reminder to the Republican state legislature, you have the final say over the choosing of electors. Not any board of elections, secretary of state, governor, or even court. You have the final say. Article 2 of the federal constitution. So get ready to do your constitutional duty. I also got this from another site. This is a constitutional law website that I went to. So it explains it a little bit better. So we are accustomed to choosing electors by popular vote. But nothing in the Constitution says it has to be that way. Article 2 provides that each state shall appoint electors in such a manner as the legislature thereof may direct. So since the late 19th century, every state has ceded this decision to its voters. Even so, the Supreme Court affirmed in Bush v. Gore that a state can take back the power to appoint the electors. How one state may do that has not been tested for well over a century. So in those slides, in a nutshell, this is what they're talking about. Each of the 50 states all have a state senate and a House of Representatives and a governor. Instead of calling him the governor, it's called the president. So within each of those 50 states, according to the Constitution, it's the state senate and the Republican together. They're the ones that get to choose the electors. Now, how we've done it for well over a century now is, as it says, that we typically let the voters go out and vote. From there, whoever gets the most votes within that state typically wins the entire state and all the electoral votes that come with it. But as you can see down here, how and when a state might do so has not been tested for well over a century. Well, Trump is going to try to test this, but how is he going to do it? Believe it or not, there's actually precedent that has been set with this. And it occurred in 1876. Rutherford B. Hayes versus Samuel J. Tilden. Look at these electoral votes down here. 185 to 184. In 1876, this is pretty much how many electoral votes that you needed to win in order to win the White House. Now, what's funny though, especially way back when, Tilden lost, but he got 50.9% of the vote versus Hayes 47.9%. So in a nutshell, Tilden won the popular vote, but he lost the election. The same thing that Trump did a couple of years ago. Now, you might think this is where he's going to bring his game plan at, and it is, but it's not the exact same way Rutherford B. Hayes did it. So something happened during that time frame, and it was called the Compromise of 1877. Both Republicans and Democrats made claims that their candidate had won the election. Now, these states here became a problem. South Carolina, Florida, Louisiana, and Oregon. Now, these numbers here in parentheses are the amount of electoral votes that those states had. So let's go over the problems that they had at the time. In South Carolina, Florida, and Louisiana. Now, keep in mind, this is only 12 years after the Civil War. What we do know, because keep in mind, this was a compromise, so there's really no paperwork to follow. There's no litigation, what have you. It was a backroom compromise made by the Southern Democrats and Rutherford B. Hayes. So South Carolina, Florida, and Louisiana. It was said that in those states that he actually did win. Tilden actually won. But what those states decided to do, they told Hayes they would not contest the election if he pulled federal troops out of those three states. The reason why federal troops were in those states was because at the time, again, this is right after the Civil War. So the federal troops were still in the South. On top of that, they were helping out black people to vote, pretty much to keep from being lynched and things of that nature. Now, throw Oregon in there. Oregon had a smaller issue, but theirs was actually more constitutional. So a postal worker at the time in Oregon who was also an elector, you cannot be someone who's an elected official who works for profit, aka the United States Postal Service, and be an elector at the same time. So the Oregon governor fired that individual and replaced him with somebody else who also picked Hayes. So pretty much all four of these states, they flipped their votes. The South, in order to move the federal troops out, and Oregon had a legal actual issue. But to move the federal troops out, they all flipped their states and gave the entire presidency to Rutherford B. Hayes. So now that brings us to, I just mentioned those electoral votes, the Electoral College. It was created as a compromise when the Constitution was established to help with ratification. So kind of, 200, 300 years ago, whenever it was, 1876, especially the southern states, they were more all about states' rights, states' rights, states' rights. And they pretty much wanted to just be a state on their own. They didn't really want to get involved in the national government like that. So they end up creating the Electoral College to give the states more of a say-so in how the president is elected. Now, back then and still to this day, it is much more popular among southern states, especially during ratification, and in modern times, states with large rural populations. So a state like Wyoming, each and every state gets 2 senators, every single state. But in these states like Wyoming, they have like outsized representation versus a state like California, because California gets the same 2 senators. But Wyoming only get 1 representative, and California gets 53 because your representatives are determined on your population. But again, it is much more popular in rural populations and in the southern U.S. This also brings us back to what I said earlier. Individual states control the Electoral College through state government. So again, each state has a House of Representatives. Each state has a Senate. Those are their state governments. They are the ones that come together and vote within the Electoral College. Now, a key day here. 2020 of this, certification occurs on December 13th of 2020. Now, I know you have heard that, well, Biden won, it's over with. Yes, but that's not legally true. The president is not officially certified this year, at least until December 13th. That's when all 50 states, plus the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., they all get together and see, they tally up the votes, and then they determine who is actually the president-elect. So the media, what they do is just projections. Now, the media is typically right, but they have been wrong a few times here, most notably back in the 1940s when Truman beat Dewey. Also 2000 when they initially called Florida for Al Gore, but it actually went to George Bush. So they can be wrong. So that's why, again, the actual certification on December 13th is the key date we all need to pay attention to. And in this time frame between now and then, this is where Donald Trump is going to, do his game plan. So, the current Electoral College projections. As you can see up here, 306 for Biden, 232 for Trump. These are pretty much, as of this moment, how each state voted. As you can see, the old typical blue states, red states, things of that nature. If nothing were to change, if all of this holds up, Joe Biden, with 306 electoral votes, becomes the president of the U.S. because you only need 270. Now, I said up here, I use the term projections instead of results, but I just explained that. This is one that those who want Trump to win likes to wordplay, because again, you have to use the word projections because these results are not officially legally certified. Now, this is the pre-election Electoral College polling. Now, this is only polling. These are not actual votes themselves. As you can see, the colors change. So here's your blues. These were considered safe Democratic states. No ifs, ands, buts about it. But you have a state like Nevada, which I'm pretty sure over the past couple of weeks, you've all noticed kept coming up. Nevada was lean Democrat, but it could go Republican. As you can see, there's a couple of other light blue states up here, Wisconsin, Michigan, because in 2016, Trump actually won those states. Those was normally solid blue states. These were states that Trump won. Now, in almost every presidential election, there's battleground states or toss-up states, whatever you want to call them. And this year's election cycle was Iowa, Arizona, Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Ohio. These are the ones that both candidates typically duke it out for, and whoever typically gets the majority of those states plus flip 1 or 2 more typically wins the election. So go up to the numbers here, the Electoral College numbers here. At the time, before the votes were counted, You had Biden projected at 258 and Trump projected at 164. And again, these brown states are toss-ups. So nobody had projected those yet. Now these polling, pre-election polling, they can go either way sometime. So like right now, you see it's 258 to 164. Some polls might have had it smaller Biden, higher Trump, and vice versa. No one polling data is exact, so don't really, stress out over, well, why did, Biden have that much or Trump have that less? As again, it's these states here, and you need to flip one or two to pretty much win the president. So again, this is the pre-election electoral college polling. Now, these are the states that Trump is going to want to contest. Now, notice that I changed a few of the colors. So North Carolina, as you can see, it's red now. It's red now. Why is it red? Because as of right now, projected, Trump won that state. Trump does not want to contest anything he won. He only wants to contest what he lost. He also won Ohio. And I'm sorry, it's cut off down here a little bit, but he also won Florida and their 29 electoral votes. So he is not going to touch those. I mean, those, in his opinion, are certified. They're good. Who cares? So those are the states he's going to want to contest. And those states are Nevada, he lost. Arizona, he lost. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. These are the states that he needs to contest in order to flip it around. So if you see back, I put these as toss-ups again. So as you can see, the electoral vote goes down to 227, Biden, and 232, Trump. Because guess what? He, again, is only going to contest the elections, the states that he lost. So as you can see, now he has the last page was 164. So now he has North Carolina, Florida, and Ohio in his back pocket. Let's get to the problem states now. This is where Trump's game plan is going to start to come in full effect. So these, pretty much the states, I just explained this kind of, the states that he lost are the ones that he wants to contest. Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona. That's it. So if he actually contested all of these states, and although you see it's light pink and not completely red, it changes the electoral votes. Because if he, let's assume that he did contest all these states and they gave all the votes to Trump. He then wins these states. So that'll be Georgia, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And that takes him above the 270 threshold. So that's why I call these a problem states. But some states are more problematic than others. And I like to call them the trifecta states, Arizona and Georgia. They're trifecta states, reason being because the state Senate, state House of Representatives, and the governor are all controlled by one party, and that's the Republican Party. Now, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, Democrats hold the governorship, but Republicans control both state houses. And remember, as I said earlier, state houses are the ones that select the electors for the Electoral College. So let's use Wisconsin and Michigan, for instance. They can actually bypass the governor in those state houses if they want to. Even though, as of this moment, Trump lost those states, the electors in those state houses can get together and say, we're giving our vote to Donald Trump. It may not sound right, but from a legal standpoint, they can do it, although it will be challenged in court. But again, let's go back up to Arizona and Georgia. As like I said, as they both are trifecta states, number one. Number two, both of these states are historically Republican states. Arizona has been Republican for much longer than any other state I can think of, since back in the 50s and the 60s. They've always just voted Republican. Georgia back in the day used to be a Democratic state, but over the years, since about 1992, they've been completely solid Republican. So as I said, the trifecta states, let's deal with these. Let's pretend Trump is able to get those state houses to reverse the vote for him. So you have Arizona, and then you have Georgia. So that then gives Trump, 27 more electoral votes. So this and then that brings Biden down. And we're going to keep for right now Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, states that Biden won, but Trump is going to try to go inside of those states because even with him flipping Arizona and Georgia, it only gets him to 259 electoral votes. And that's not enough to become president. Again, as you can see, Biden drops down. So back to the trifecta states. Again, these states have Republican Senate, Republican House of Representatives, Republican governor, and also they have been historically Republican states. So these two states definitely are at play at potentially helping Trump win the White House. So now we're going to get into Pennsylvania. So look closely down here. you have 50% of the vote in Pennsylvania going to Joe Biden of the Democratic Party and 48% of the vote going to Donald Trump. So reason why it's not 50-50 is because Pennsylvania had a decent amount of their votes go for Jill Stein. She is a third party candidate. Most people have never heard of her, but she's a libertarian. But that's another that's another topic in and of itself. So again, Pennsylvania, Donald Trump is going to try to play here, and actually he already have, especially up here in Philadelphia County, where a few days ago, he pretty much tried to overturn all the votes in Philadelphia. Of course, Philadelphia, like most major cities in the U.S., votes heavily Democratic. But in my opinion, and according to the court cases that have all been thrown out of courts over the last couple of weeks, he doesn't have a play anymore in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is pretty much Joe Biden territory. And Pennsylvania has 20 electoral votes, so we can kind of wipe that one out of Donald Trump's favor because, again, he just doesn't have a play there. Also, let's add Michigan in here as well. Michigan, again, 2016, Michigan actually went for Donald Trump. Michigan is usually reliably blue, but again, that year went for Donald Trump. So over the past couple of days in Wayne County, which is where Detroit is located at, they just recently certified the votes in that particular county, not the state. Now, there's been a lot of ways that Donald Trump is showing his hand. Pretty much a lot of people initially decided to do was not to certify the ballot. They just said they felt some irregularities happen. But after an overnight visit of some people of what have you, they pretty much certified it. And then they said, they was accused of being racist because, of course, Detroit is heavily black. So Pennsylvania and both Michigan, we can wipe those off of Trump's board. But that leads us to a very important state. And that state is Wisconsin. Wisconsin has 10 electoral votes. And Wisconsin also has a recent history of a couple of different recall and recount elections. So again, here in 2012, there was a recall election against the sitting governor, Scott Walker. Now, Walker did win the recount. On top of that, in 2016, Jill Stein, who again ran this year as well, she ordered a recount of Donald Trump. Now, reason why Wisconsin is kind of a crazy situation here is because outside of Green Bay, the Green Bay area in Milwaukee, Wisconsin is extremely rural. On top of that, in the past, within the past 10 years or so, their state legislature has passed a couple of different crazy laws. So they are much more willing to do a recount than anyone else. On top of that, their state legislature, in my opinion, would definitely not vote for Joe Biden if they could get away with it. So let's go back for a second here. Also, Donald Trump, if he decides to have a recount, he's going to have to pay $10 million to do this. Now, Trump's a billionaire. I don't think that's going to be that big of a deal for him or his campaign or his supporters. So, if they are able to switch Wisconsin and there are 10 electoral votes, look what happens. 269, 269. This will be everything. Keep in mind, again, back to the trifecta states, Georgia and Arizona flips again for Donald Trump. Minnesota stays the same. Michigan stays the same. But Wisconsin flips, and those other two flip. We have a tie. And this right here is where things get tricky. But at the same time, there is actually a constitutional way around this that would 100% benefit Donald Trump. So what happens when we have a tie? There will be two extra states that will be more scrutinized, Maine and Nebraska. And we're going to get to that in a second. This route could get very messy, and I'll explain. The second way is a contingent election. It's the easiest route to go, and in my opinion, that's the way Donald Trump definitely will go. Now, again, keep in mind, Republicans control more state houses than Democrats. So, Maine and Nebraska both split their electoral votes. Nebraska has 5 votes, Maine has 4. In both states, the winner of the popular vote receives 2 votes automatically. Now, within each congressional district, whoever wins the popular vote in those states also wins 1 extra electoral vote for that congressional district. Wins in an extra electoral vote. Also, Trump received 1 vote from Maine, while Biden received 1 from Nebraska. And I'll explain here. So look down here. Now, as you can see, Maine is up there and Nebraska is up here. I apologize. These little slight lines of blue right here should be red because Trump won most of the entire state. But this little area up here, right there, there's a little blue right there. There's a reason for that. That's Omaha. That's Nebraska's largest city. And again, like most cities, it tends to vote Democratic. So let's go down here. Remember how I just explained it. So Trump won the popular vote in Nebraska. That automatically gives him 2 votes. Now, Nebraska has 3 congressional districts. So here's one that Trump won. Here's the other one that Trump won. But that one vote from Omaha is what Biden won. So how Trump will try to contest this is he will try to say that in Omaha there was voter fraud, there was this, there was that, to try to overturn that vote. That would then give him 270 points. 270 electoral votes. Let's go down here to Maine real quickly as well. So in Maine, Joe Biden actually won the popular vote in the state. So that's how he gets the 2 popular vote electoral votes. He also won one of the congressional districts, but Trump won this district. So again, Trump is not going to contest anything he won, only things that he didn't win. So he may try to contest the entire state, but I highly doubt that. But his best route would be to contest Omaha. But again, this can get really messy. And what I mean by that, you now have to break down individual votes by individual states. It can get really messy. And in my opinion, he will go the easiest route. And that's a contingent election. Contingent election goes like this. If a determination that neither candidate has secured a majority of electoral votes, that would trigger a contingent election under the 12th Amendment of the Constitution. That means the House of Representatives chooses the next president, while the Senate selects the vice president. Each state delegation in the House gets a single vote. As of now, Republicans control 26 of the 50 state delegations, while Democrats have 22. One is split evenly, and another has 7 Democrats, 6 Republicans, and Libertarian. So this is the key part. Republicans control 26 out of the 50 states. So how it works again is this. Let's use California again. California, although it has 55 electoral votes, in this situation, the state would get 1 vote. So since they have more Democrats there, the Democrats will get together and outvote the Republicans, and California will get 1 vote. So now let's go up to Montana. Although Montana doesn't have anywhere near the amount of people that California does, guess what? That's a red state, a Republican state, and they still get the same vote. So guess what? 26 out of 50 states belong to Republicans. So exactly what do you think is going to happen if it comes down to a contingent election? Donald Trump will end up winning that. Also, a contingent election, it also takes place in the event of a 269 tie after the election. So that's what I just kind of explained when I said it to get a little bit messy. This is why Trump will go this route. It would make no sense for him to try to contest Omaha when it would go to a contingent election anyway. So if all goes according to plan, according to Donald Trump's plan, guess what? Here you have it. Trump will be, or could be, the president of the United States, even though he lost the electoral vote, even though he lost the popular vote. It will completely be done by state houses. And that's pretty much how it's written into the Constitution in so many ways. So let's recap. Donald Trump can still win the 2020 election. He can, though through some legal actions and some not so legal, primarily through loopholes of the law. The 1876 election has set some precedent for this to happen. It can happen. It really can. Now, is it possible? Absolutely. Is it probable? Really, it isn't. But with Donald Trump, is the type of dude that you just do not take anything off the table. And lastly, in a contingent election, Republicans control more state houses than Democrats. Again, they control 26 of them. So the Republicans would get together in those 26 states, and they would then make Donald Trump the president, regardless of the will of the people. This part right here is not a loophole. It is 100% legal. So thank you for watching my video. Thank you for watching my slides. Again, if you like my video, please do me a favor. Hit the like and subscribe button. And thank you for listening to Riley's Talk.